The desolate planet. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, there lay a desolate planet known as Xenos Prime. A world of rolling dunes and relentless heat, it was a place where few dared to tread. The skies were a dull orange, filled with swirling dust storms that rolled like angry beasts, making survival a daily struggle. It was here that Jax Rogan, a roguish human smuggler, found himself on an unexpected detour. He had landed on Xenos Prime for a simple job: drop off a shipment of rare minerals to a contact who had promised him a quick payout. But as Jax surveyed the barren landscape from the dusty viewport of his ship, the Stellar Rogue, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this planet than met the eye. Little did he know that destiny had other plans for him. As Jax disembarked, the heat enveloped him like a thick blanket. He adjusted the brim of his hat against the glaring sun and took a deep breath. He was used to harsh conditions. His line of work had exposed him to all manner of environments. But today felt different. Today, he sensed something waiting for him just beyond the dunes. He started his trek across the sandy expanse, his boots sinking into the soft earth. After a few minutes of walking, he heard it, a faint, distressed sound carried on the hot wind. It was a cry, almost a whimper, that tugged at his heart. Jax paused, his instincts as a smuggler kicking in. He wasn't one to get involved in others' problems, but something about that sound pulled him closer. Against his better judgment, he decided to investigate. After what felt like an eternity of trudging through the sand, Jax spotted a figure in the distance. Kneeling beside her was an alien woman, her shimmering golden hair flowing like a cascade of sunlight, contrasting sharply with the muted tones of the desert. She was cradling two large, feline-like creatures that lay motionless on the ground, their fur a deep azure, blending into the stark landscape. Jax's heart raced as he approached her, the whimpering growing louder. "Hey there, sweetheart," he called out, trying to mask his concern with charm. "Looks like you could use a hand." The alien woman looked up, startled. Her luminous blue eyes glistened with tears, and her delicate features twisted in distress. "Please, my darlings are dying. They need water." Her voice was melodic yet filled with despair. Jax's gaze fell upon the two creatures, Nyx and Azora, as he would later learn they were called. They were magnificent, but now they lay panting in the brutal heat, their tongues lolling out as they struggled for breath. Jax knew he didn't have much water left in his canteen, but he couldn't leave them to perish. With a heavy sigh, he unclipped the canteen from his belt and approached her. "Here, this is all I've got. Make it count." As she accepted the canteen, their fingers brushed together, sending an unexpected jolt through him. The alien woman's eyes widened with gratitude as she tipped the water into the creatures' mouths. They drank eagerly, and Jax watched in awe as life returned to their eyes. "I am forever in your debt," she said softly, her voice like a gentle breeze. "I am Noria of the Andori. These are my beloved companions." Jax Rogan, he introduced himself, still captivated by her beauty. "What brings a pretty thing like you to a wasteland like this?" Noria's expression darkened. "My ship crashed here 2 cycles ago. We've been stranded ever since, barely surviving." She cast a worried glance at Nyx and Azora. They are not used to such harsh conditions. On Andaria, water is plentiful. Jax felt a pang of sympathy. He knew he should get back to his own ship and leave this whole mess behind, but abandoning her and her pets felt wrong. "Listen," he found himself saying, "I've got a ship not far from here. I can give you a lift to the nearest spaceport. Maybe even rustle up some more water for your furry friends." Noria's eyes widened in disbelief. "You would do that for us, but why? You don't even know me." Jax shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Let's just say I've got a soft spot for damsels in distress, especially the blue-skinned, golden-haired variety." A faint blush colored Noria's cheeks, making her even more enchanting. I don't know what to say. Thank you, Jax Rogan. Your kindness will not be forgotten." As they began the trek back to the Stellar Rogue, Jax couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn for the complicated. One glance at Naria, flanked by her majestic companions, and he knew he had made the right choice. The desert sun beat down on them mercilessly as they walked, but Jax barely noticed the heat. His mind was too occupied with thoughts of the alien woman beside him. He had met his fair share of females across the galaxy, but none quite like Naria. There was a regal air about her, a sense of nobility that belied her current circumstances. As they neared his ship, Jax felt a pang of apprehension. He wasn't used to having passengers, let alone ones as striking as Naria. Part of him worried that he was getting in over his head, but when Naria turned to him, her eyes shining with gratitude, he pushed those doubts aside. "Not much to look at," he said as they approached the stellar rogue, "but she'll get us where we need to go." Naria tilted her head, studying the battered freighter with curiosity. "She looks perfect to me," she said softly. Jax felt warmth bloom in his chest at her words. He keyed in the access code, and the ship's ramp lowered with a hiss. "Welcome aboard," he said, gesturing for Naria and her companions to enter. As they stepped into the cool interior of the ship, Jax couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed forever. Little did he know just how right he was. Shadows of the past. The interior of the stellar rogue was a blend of rugged charm and advanced technology. Dim lights flickered overhead as Jax led Naria and her companions into the cockpit. The faint hum of the ship's engines enveloped them, creating a comforting atmosphere in stark contrast to the desolation outside. Jax moved to the pilot's seat, quickly running through the pre-flight checks while stealing glances at Naria. She had settled into a corner, her golden hair shimmering even in the low light, and she appeared to be whispering soothing words to Nyx and Azora as they settled beside her. "Do you think they'll be okay?" Jax asked, his voice softer than he intended. He felt a strange sense of responsibility for her and her pets, a feeling he had long since buried under layers of cynicism and detachment. Naria looked up, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of hope and concern. "They'll be fine," she assured him, though the slight tremor in her voice suggested otherwise. "They just need time and more water. They're strong. We all are." Jax nodded, focusing on the controls. He couldn't help but admire her strength, her unwavering determination in the face of such dire circumstances. As he set the coordinates for the nearest spaceport, he wondered about the life she had left behind. What kind of world was Andaria, and what had driven her to escape? The thought lingered in his mind like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Once they were airborne, the ship's engines roared to life, and the stellar row broke free from Xenos Prime's gravitational pull. Jax glanced at the display, watching as the planet shrank behind them, its dunes fading into the orange haze. He felt a surge of relief wash over him, but it was tinged with apprehension. They weren't safe yet. As they cruised through the vast emptiness of space, Jax decided it was time to learn more about the woman he had rescued. "So, Naria," he began, attempting to keep his tone casual, "what's Andaria like? You mentioned it was a lush planet." Her expression brightened, and for a moment, the weight of her troubles seemed to lift. "Andaria is beautiful," she said, her voice warm with nostalgia. "It's a world of vibrant colors and lush landscapes. We have forests filled with iridescent flowers, vast lakes where the waters shimmer like liquid crystal, and mountains that reach for the stars. My family's palace overlooks the Emerald Lake, where Nyx and Azora love to swim. It's paradise, really." Jax couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. "Sounds like a dream," he replied. "And yet you found yourself here, on this dusty rock." Noria's smile faded as she recalled her past. "It was a beautiful life, but it was suffocating. I was betrothed to a warlord, a man named Dex Vortex. My parents arranged it to secure an alliance with his family, but I couldn't go through with it. I didn't want to be a pawn in a game of power, so I ran." Jax leaned back in his chair, processing her words. "And now Dex is hunting you." Her gaze hardened, and Jax saw the fire in her eyes. "Yes, he won't stop until he finds me." He wants to use me as a means to consolidate his power. If he captures me, I fear for my life and the lives of those I care about." The reality of her situation settled heavily in the cockpit. Jax had dealt with plenty of dangerous characters in his time, but a warlord was a different beast altogether. "What kind of man is this Dex?" he asked, intrigued despite himself. "He's ruthless, cruel. He doesn't value life unless it serves his interests. When I escaped, I took everything from him: the alliance, the power, the future he envisioned. He'll stop at nothing to reclaim what he believes is rightfully his," Noria said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "Sounds like you made the right choice," Jax said. "You're better off without him." "Maybe," she replied softly, looking out at the stars through the cockpit window. "But I can't help but wonder if I'm putting others in danger by running. I never wanted this life for Nyx and Azora." Jax felt a pang of sympathy. He could see the burden she carried, the weight of her choices, and the consequences that came with them. "You're not to blame for your past. It was your choice to fight for your freedom. You're strong, and you'll find a way to protect them." Nuria's gaze shifted to him, her expression softening. "Thank you, Jax. I didn't expect to find someone like you on this forsaken planet. You've shown me kindness when I needed it most." A warmth blossomed in Jax's chest at her words. He wasn't used to being the hero, let alone someone's savior. He was a smuggler, a man who thrived in the shadows and avoided entanglements. Yet here he was, drawn into a battle that was not his own, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. "Just don't make a habit of it," he said with a teasing grin. "I've got a reputation to uphold." Noria chuckled softly, and the sound lit up the cockpit, dispelling the heaviness that had settled between them. They shared stories throughout the journey, exchanging laughter and tales of their respective worlds. Jax spoke of his daring escapades, the narrow escapes, and the countless times he had danced with danger. Noria shared tales of her home, painting pictures of a life he could hardly imagine. As the stars whizzed by, Jax couldn't shake the feeling that his life was taking a new direction. Noria was unlike anyone he had ever met, brave, compassionate, and determined to fight for her freedom. It was a refreshing change from the self-serving individuals he usually encountered. But the comfort of their camaraderie was short-lived. As they approached the spaceport, a sudden alarm blared through the ship, shattering the serene atmosphere. Jax's heart raced as he glanced at the console, seeing a series of blips indicating multiple ships on their tail. "Jax," Noria exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. "What's happening?" "Looks like Dex's forces found us," he said, his mind racing as he quickly calculated their options. "We need to get out of here now." With a flick of his wrist, Jax initiated evasive maneuvers. The ship jerked and swerved as he fought to keep them steady, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The stars outside became streaks of light as they narrowly avoided incoming fire. "Can you take us into the asteroid belt?" Noria shouted, her voice a mix of panic and urgency. Jax nodded, his jaw clenched. "It's risky, but it might buy us some time." "Hold on." He angled the ship toward the cluster of asteroids, plunging them into the chaotic field. As they entered the belt, the ship rocked violently, and Noria braced herself against the console. Jax maneuvered through the maze of floating debris, dodging bullets and explosions that echoed behind them. He could feel the tension rising, but he couldn't let fear take hold. "Keep an eye on our six," Jax shouted, his focus laser-sharp. "I'll do my best to shake them off." Noria nodded, her expression fierce as she activated the ship's defense systems. "I won't let them get to us." The stellar road twisted and turned, weaving through the asteroids with a grace that belied its battered exterior. Jax felt the rush of adrenaline heighten his senses as he fought to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. With every sharp turn, he could see the enemy ships striving to follow, their weapons firing wildly in their wake. But the danger was far from over. The enemy was relentless, and Jax could hear the distant echoes of explosions as his pursuers clashed with the debris around them. "We need to find a way to lose them." Noria shouted, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of blaster fire and rumbling engines. Jack's mind raced as he weighed his options. I can set up a decoy and head for that cluster of asteroids. If we time it right, we might just be able to lose them. Do it, Noria urged, determination shining in her eyes. With a fierce resolve, Jax initiated the plan. He activated the decoy, launching it out of the ship and sending it into the depths of the asteroid field. He then angled the stellar road toward a narrow passage between two massive asteroids. Hold on tight, he warned as he sent the ship barreling through the gap. The cockpit shuddered, and the roar of the engines drowned out everything else. Jax felt the thrill of the chase surge through him as they plunged deeper into the field, the rocky debris swirling around them like a chaotic dance. The enemy ships followed, their engines screaming as they pursued. But as they entered the narrow passage, Jax saw his opportunity. With a quick flick of the controls, he banked sharply to the left, sending the stellar row careening into a hidden alcove. The enemy ships barreled past, unable to slow down in time. Jax watched, breath held, as they shot into the void, lost in the chaos of the asteroid field. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, and his heart raced as he glanced over at Noria, who was still gripping the console, eyes wide with exhilaration. "Did we lose them?" she asked, her voice trembling with excitement. Jax smiled, a mix of relief and adrenaline coursing through him. "For now, but we need to keep moving. They'll regroup, and we can't risk being caught again." Noria nodded, her expression shifting to one of fierce determination. "Then let's get out of here and head to a safe world. We can't stop until we're free." "Agreed," Jax said, feeling the spark of adventure ignite within him. He fired up the engines and set their course for a distant planet, a place where they could regroup and plan their next move. As they soared into the depths of space, Jax couldn't help but feel that they had entered a new chapter in their lives. They were fugitives now, bound together by circumstance and a shared resolve to fight for freedom. Little did they know, their journey had only just begun, and the shadows of the past would soon catch up with them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Unraveling the threads, the stellar rove drifted through the vast expanse of space, leaving behind the chaotic asteroid field and the lurking threats of Dex vortex forces. Jax sat at the helm, his hands gripping the controls as he navigated toward the distant planet of Ullon 7, a world known for its dense jungles and sprawling underground markets. It was a perfect hiding place for fugitives like them, a place where secrets thrived and the shadows of the past could be buried deep. Beside him, Noria was lost in thought, her brow furrowed as she stroked Nyx and Bazora, who had settled on her lap, their fur matted and damp from the heat of the previous confrontation. "I can't believe we got away," she finally said, breaking the silence. "I thought for sure we were done for when they started firing." Jax shot her a reassuring smile. "We're still breathing, aren't we? That means we're not done yet." He paused, his gaze drifting to the stars outside. "But we can't let our guard down. Dex has resources, and he won't stop until he finds you." "I know," she replied, her voice heavy with the weight of her circumstances. "But I can't let him dictate my life any longer. I want to take control of my destiny. This isn't just about escaping anymore. It's about fighting back." "Fighting back, huh?" Jax raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" Noria turned to face him, her eyes alight with determination. "I need to gather information about Dex's operations. If I can learn what he's planning, I might be able to strike first. I can't let him use me as a pawn again." Jax considered her words carefully. He had lived a life of running and hiding, but he had also seen what true bravery looked like. "All right," he said slowly, "but we'll need to be careful. Ullum 7 is known for its smuggling routes and black markets. It can be a treacherous place if you don't know who to trust." Noria nodded, her expression resolute. "Then we'll find someone who knows the territory. We need to blend in and gather intel without drawing attention to ourselves." As they approached Ullum 7, Jax initiated the landing sequence, and the ship descended toward a dense canopy of emerald trees that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air was thick with humidity, and as they touched down, the sounds of the jungle enveloped them: chirping insects, distant animal calls, and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. "Welcome to Olon 7, Jax said with a smirk, stepping out of the cockpit and gesturing to the vibrant surroundings. "Looks cozy, doesn't it?" "Cozy? This looks like a jungle nightmare." Noria laughed, shaking her head as she stepped out behind him. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. "But it's beautiful in its own way." Jax turned to her, the sunlight glinting off her hair. "Just wait until nightfall. It gets even wilder. Let's find a place to lay low, then we can start gathering information." They moved cautiously through the underbrush, Nyx and Azora trotting at their heels. The jungle felt alive, the vibrant colors and sounds creating a symphony of life around them. After a short trek, they stumbled upon a ramshackle settlement hidden among the trees, an outpost for traders and smugglers. Jax led Naria into the heart of the settlement, where makeshift stalls lined the dirt paths. Vendors shouted out their wares, showcasing everything from exotic fruits to dubious tech salvaged from wrecked ships. The air was thick with the scent of spices and something oddly metallic. "This place is a hive of scum and villainy," Jax remarked, eyeing a suspicious figure lurking by a stall selling weapons. "Stay close and don't engage with anyone unless you have to." Naria nodded, her senses heightened as they weaved through the crowd. "Where do we start?" "Let's try the bar," Jax suggested, pointing to a dimly lit establishment with flickering neon signs above the entrance. "The patrons there are usually well-informed." They pushed through the swinging doors, the atmosphere thick with smoke and laughter. Dim lights illuminated a collection of rough characters nursing drinks and sharing stories. Jax scanned the room, searching for someone who might have information about Dex operations. "Stay here," he said to Naria as he approached the bar. "I'll see if I can find a contact." Naria watched him go, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The bar was a cacophony of voices, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. She could feel the weight of the gazes from the patrons, and she shifted uncomfortably, holding Nyx and Azora close. After a few minutes, Jax returned, a broad grin on his face. "I found someone who might have the intel we need. His name's Rax, a local trader. He's in the back corner." Noria followed Jax to the dimly lit booth, where a scruffy-looking man with a patchy beard sat nursing a drink. He looked up as they approached, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. "What do you want?" Rax grumbled, eyeing them both. "We need information," Jax replied, leaning against the table, "about Dex Vortex and his operations." Rax's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition passing across his face. "That's dangerous business, friend. You sure you want to get involved?" "We don't have a choice," Naria interjected, her voice steady. "I won't let him control my life any longer. I need to know what he's planning." Rax studied her for a moment and then shrugged. "All right, but it's going to cost you. Information like this doesn't come cheap." "What do you want?" Jax asked, crossing his arms. "Simple. I need a favor. There's a shipment of goods coming in from the Outer Rim tomorrow, and I want you to intercept it for me. Get me what I need, and I'll give you the information you're after." Jax and Naria exchanged glances, weighing their options. They didn't have many leads, and this might be their only chance to get the intel they desperately needed. "Fine," Jax said finally. "We'll do it." "Good choice," Rax replied with a smirk. "Meet me at the old ruins just outside the settlement at dawn. I'll give you the details then." With that, Rax dismissed them with a wave of his hand, and Jax and Naria stepped away from the booth, the gravity of their situation settling heavily on them. "What did we just agree to?" Noria asked, her brow furrowed. "We're risking everything for a shipment we know nothing about." Jax ran a hand through his hair, his expression serious. "I know, but it's our best shot. We need to know what Dex is up to, And if Rax has the information we need, we have to take this chance. Noria sighed, glancing around the bar filled with dubious characters. I just hope we can pull this off without drawing too much attention. I can't let Dex find us again. Jack's expression softened as he looked at her. We'll be careful, you have my word. As they left the bar and stepped back into the humid night, Jax felt a surge of determination. They were in the deep end now, but he would do whatever it took to keep Noria safe. They had to fight back, not just against Dex, but against the fear that threatened to consume them both. Shadows in the jungle. The jungle was alive with sounds as dawn broke over Olong 7, casting a soft golden hue through the thick canopy. Jax and Noria made their way to the old ruins, the air heavy with humidity and the scent of damp earth. Nyx and Azora padded silently alongside them, their keen senses alert to every rustle and movement around them. Jax led the way, his eyes scanning the surroundings. The ancient stones of the ruins loomed ahead, half enshrouded by vines and foliage, remnants of a civilization long forgotten. As they approached, he could feel the weight of history in the air, a blend of reverence and danger. It was the perfect hiding place for secrets, but also a potential trap. Stay close, Jax murmured to Noria, who was marveling at the intricate carvings on the stones. Rax mentioned something about rival traders operating in the area. We can't afford to let our guard down. Noria nodded, her curiosity about the ruins momentarily overshadowed by the looming threat. Right, let's focus on the mission. They entered the ruins, their footsteps echoing softly against the stone floor. The interior was dark, with only slivers of light filtering through gaps in the crumbling walls. Jax took a deep breath, adjusting to the coolness that enveloped them, and peered into the shadows. Rax said he'd meet us here. We should find a spot to wait, he suggested, moving deeper into the ruins. As they settled in a corner, Noria leaned against a weathered pillar, her eyes darting around. What do you think this place was? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jax glanced around, considering her question. Could be an ancient temple or a gathering place. The carvings suggest it was important to whoever lived here. They might have worshipped some kind of deity. Noria traced her fingers over the carvings, her mind racing with thoughts of what had transpired in this place. It feels powerful, like the echoes of the past are still present. Before Jax could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed through the ruins. His heart raced, instincts kicking in as he turned to Noria. Get ready, Rax is here, or it could be trouble. The footsteps drew closer, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Rax, his scruffy beard and wild hair illuminated in the soft light. He had a lopsided grin on his face, but Jax didn't trust it. You made it, Rax exclaimed, his eyes darting to Nyx and Azora. And you brought company. Cute pets you've got there. Cut the small talk, Jax replied, his tone firm. We're here for the details about the shipment. Rax nodded, leaning against a nearby stone wall. All right. Here's the deal. The shipment is coming in from the outer rim and is scheduled to dock at the old spaceport just outside the settlement. It's a mix of luxury goods and some high-tech equipment, the kind of stuff that's bound to attract attention. Any idea who's involved? Noria asked, her curiosity piqued despite the danger. Just the usual players, Rax replied, waving a hand dismissively. But the main point is that Dex Vortex's men are likely on the lookout for it. They want that shipment badly. If we intercept it, we might find something that could expose his operations. Jax exchanged glances with Noria, feeling the weight of the moment. And how do we do that without getting caught? Rax smirked, leaning in closer. That's where it gets interesting. The shipment will be guarded, but there's a back entrance to the spaceport, lesser known, more dangerous, but it'll give us a chance to slip in unnoticed. Once inside, you'll need to locate the shipment and disable any security systems. Then we make our exit before Dex's men even know we were there. Noria frowned, a hint of hesitation in her voice. And what if they catch us? Rax shrugged. You'll have to be quick and clever, just like you were to escape Dex in the first place. Jax felt a surge of determination. We can do this, but we'll need a plan. We can't just rush in without knowing what we're up against. Good point, Rax replied, straightening up. We'll need to scout the area, identify guard positions, and find a route to the shipment. You'll also want to grab some gear from my stash to help with the operation. I've got some weapons and gadgets that could come in handy. Let's get moving then, Jax said, his resolve hardening. We don't have much time. We'll scout the area, gather intel, and then go from there. As they stepped out of the ruins, the jungle greeted them with its symphony of sounds, but a new sense of purpose drove them forward. Noria walked alongside Jax, her heart racing with adrenaline and fear. What if this goes wrong? We'll make it right, Jax reassured her. We're in this together, you and me against the galaxy. The trio moved stealthily through the undergrowth, keeping to the shadows as they approached the outskirts of the settlement. Jax felt the tension in the air, the weight of what lay ahead hanging heavily on his shoulders. They reached a vantage point overlooking the old spaceport, its rusty structures jutting into the sky like broken teeth. There it is, Rax said, pointing. See the guards? They're scattered, but there are a few stationed near the main loading bay. Noria focused on the scene below, her heart pounding. How do we get in? There's a service entrance to the left, Jax explained. If we can get there undetected, we should be able to access the loading bay without raising an alarm. Rax nodded, his expression serious. Once inside, stick to the shadows and move quickly. We'll need to locate the shipment and figure out how to disable the security. If we're quick, we might just make it. Noria took a deep breath, steeling herself. Then let's do it. They began to move toward the service entrance, Jax leading the way with Noria close behind. As they approached the port, the sounds of machinery echoed in the air, mingling with distant voices. Jax felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins, his senses heightened, every rustle of leaves and shift of the wind sharpening his focus. Stay low, he whispered, motioning for Noria and Rax to follow him. They slipped through the dense foliage, hearts pounding as they drew closer to their target. The service entrance loomed ahead, a dilapidated door partially concealed by overgrown vines. Jax pressed against the wall, his instincts on high alert. We're almost there, just a little further. As they reached the door, Jax tested the handle, and to his surprise, it turned easily. It's unlocked, he said, glancing back at Noria. Let's go. They slipped inside, the musty air wrapping around them like a shroud. The darkness enveloped them, but Jax could hear the faint hum of machinery in the distance. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, a mini scanner. This will help us find the shipment, he said, turning it on. The screen flickered to life, showing a layout of the building. We need to head toward the loading bay. They moved quickly, glancing over their shoulders as they navigated the dimly lit corridors. Jax could feel the tension building, the air thick with the possibility of danger. Every corner turned was a reminder of how close they were to being discovered. Here, he whispered, pausing outside a door that led to the loading bay. He could hear voices on the other side. We need to be careful. Noria nodded, gripping Nyx and Azora tightly. I can't believe we're actually doing this. Jax took a deep breath, gathering his courage. On 3, 1, 2, 3. He flung the door open, and they rushed inside, but the moment froze as they were met with a scene that made their hearts drop. A group of guards stood around a massive crate, the insignia of Dex Vortex clearly visible on its side. The shipment they had come to intercept was right in front of them. Get down, Jax shouted as he ducked behind a stack of crates, pulling Noria and Rax with him. The guards looked startled, their weapons drawn. Who's there? One of them shouted, scanning the area. Jax's mind raced. They had to act fast, or they would be trapped. We need a distraction, he whispered, his eyes darting around for anything they could use. Noria's eyes lit up with an idea. The crates. We can create a diversion. Go for it, Jax replied, motioning for her to move. I'll cover you. Noria nodded and dashed toward a nearby stack of crates. She grabbed a small canister from her belt, a device Jax had seen her tinker with before, and threw it to the ground. It exploded in a cloud of smoke and sparks, filling the air with confusion. Over here, Jax shouted, firing his blaster at a nearby wall to draw the guards' attention. The guards turned startled, and Jax seized the opportunity. Now, Noria. Noria sprinted toward the massive crate, quickly typing in a code she had memorized from her time working with decks of operations. The lock clicked open, and she threw the doors wide, revealing a trove of weapons and tech. Rax joined her, quickly searching through the items. This is it. This is what Dex is smuggling. Jax took aim at the guards, who were now completely distracted by the smoke. We need to grab as much as we can and get out of here. Noria's heart raced as she grabbed a handful of energy blasters and a small device that glowed with potential. I've got what we need. Let's go. As they began to retreat, Jax shouted, "Cover me," and fired at the nearest guard, who stumbled back in surprise. The chaos of the smoke and confusion worked to their advantage, but they knew they had to move quickly. "Let's go," Noria urged, her adrenaline pumping as they dashed toward the exit. They barely made it through the door and a blaring alarm filled the air, red lights flashing overhead. "Run," Jax shouted, and they bolted down the corridor, their hearts racing as they heard the guards shouting behind them. They raced through the service entrance, bursting out into the morning light. The jungle greeted them with its vibrant chaos, but they didn't stop to catch their breath. Jax led the way, his instincts guiding them through the thick foliage as they tried to put distance between themselves and the chaos they had left behind. "Which way?" Noria gasped, struggling to keep pace. "Just follow me," Jax shouted, his heart pounding as they weaved through the trees. Suddenly, a burst of blaster fire echoed behind them, the whizzing sound slicing through the air. "They're right on our tails," Rax exclaimed, his eyes wide with fear. "Keep running," Jax urged, pushing them forward. The jungle thickened around them, branches and vines clawing at their skin as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Just when they thought they might have lost their pursuers, another shout rang out from behind. "There, they're getting away." Jax glanced back, spotting a group of guards breaking through the underbrush, their weapons raised. "We need to find cover." Noria's mind raced as they sprinted, searching for any place to hide. "Over there," she yelled, pointing to a cluster of large rocks partially concealed by ferns. They dashed toward the rocks, diving behind them just as blaster fire erupted, the energy beams sizzling through the air above them. Jax took a moment to catch his breath, his heart racing in his chest. "Are you all right?" Noria asked, glancing at him, concern etched on her face. Just give me a second," Jax replied, trying to steady his breathing. He peered over the rocks, watching as the guards spread out, searching for them. "We can't stay here," Rax said, his voice tense. "If they find us, we're done for." Jax nodded, determination flooding his veins. "We'll have to create another diversion. Noria, can you use that device you grabbed to distract them?" Noria's eyes brightened. "Yes, I can set it to create an explosion on the other side of the clearing. It should draw their attention." "Do it," Jax urged. "We need to move while they're distracted." Noria nodded, her fingers trembling as she activated the device. "I'll set it for 30 seconds. That should give us enough time to slip away." "All right, on my mark," Jax said, peering over the rocks to gauge the guards' positions. 3, 2, 1, go. Noria quickly set the device down, and they all scrambled away, heartbeats racing as they dashed to the edge of the clearing. Just as they reached the tree line, a loud explosion erupted behind them, sending a shockwave of sound through the air. "Run," Jax shouted, pushing through the underbrush as the guards yelled in confusion, scrambling to regroup. They moved deeper into the jungle, branches whipping against their skin as they ran. The explosion had bought them precious time, but they knew they weren't safe yet. "Keep going," Noria urged, her voice laced with urgency. "We have to get far enough away that they can't track us." Jax felt the adrenaline surging as they pressed on, his heart pounding with every step. They zigzagged through the dense foliage, trying to stay silent, but the sound of their footsteps echoed in the stillness of the jungle. After what felt like hours, they finally slowed down, collapsing behind a thicket of bushes to catch their breath. The sounds of the jungle enveloped them, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. "We did it," Noria panted, her chest heaving. "We actually pulled it off." Jax glanced at her, a mix of relief and pride swelling in his chest. "Yeah, we did. But we can't celebrate yet. We need to figure out what to do with what we've got." Rax nodded, his expression serious. "We need to get back to the ship and analyze this equipment. If it's what I think it is, we might have a chance to take Dex down for good." "Then let's move," Jax said, determination flooding his veins. "This fight isn't over yet." As they made their way back through the jungle, the reality of their mission settled in. They had taken the first step toward reclaiming Noria's freedom, but the path ahead was fraught with danger. Jax knew they were still in the thick of it, but with each stride, he felt the weight of hope propelling them forward. The calm before the storm. The jungle loomed ahead, vibrant and alive, as Jax, Noria, and Rax navigated their way back toward the ship. Each step felt heavier with the knowledge of what lay ahead. A confrontation with Dex Vortex that could change the course of their lives forever. After an exhausting trek through the dense underbrush, they finally emerged onto a narrow, winding path that led to the small clearing where Jax had parked their ship. The vessel was a modest freighter, its dull exterior almost camouflaged against the rich greens and browns of the jungle. Jax felt a wave of relief wash over him as they approached it, but that relief was fleeting, replaced by a sense of foreboding. "Get inside and secure the area," Jax instructed, glancing around for any signs of danger. The quiet of the jungle felt deceptive, as if it were holding its breath for what was to come. Noria and Rax nodded, moving swiftly. As they climbed aboard, Jax's gaze lingered on the entrance to the jungle, where the shadows seemed to dance with unspoken threats. With a deep breath, he followed them inside. The interior of the ship was cramped but functional. The dim lights flickered to life as he activated the systems. Rax was already seated at the control panel, typing in commands to bring the ship's systems online. "Let's see what we're working with," Rax said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "If we're going to confront Dex, we need to know exactly what we're up against." Jax turned to Noria, who was poring over the equipment they had stolen. "You all right?" he asked gently, noting the tension in her shoulders. She nodded, but her eyes were troubled. "I just can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Dex won't just let this slide." "True," Jax replied, trying to keep his own worries at bay. "But we've got something he wants, and that gives us leverage." Noria looked up, meeting his gaze. "You think he'll come after us?" "I think he'll come after everything we have," Jax said, his voice firm. "But we'll be ready for him." Rax interrupted, his voice laced with urgency. "Guys, I've got the data from the shipment." He turned the monitor toward them, displaying a series of schematics and information. "This tech isn't just valuable, it's dangerous. Dex has been smuggling advanced weaponry, and I suspect he's planning something big." Jax leaned closer, studying the screen. "What kind of weaponry?" "Energy blasters, explosives, and even prototype shields," Rax explained, his eyes glinting with excitement and fear. "If Dex gets this into the wrong hands, it could be catastrophic. We need to stop him." Noria frowned, her brow furrowing. "But how? We don't even know where he's operating from. He could have a whole fleet ready to ambush us." Rax nodded thoughtfully. "That's why we need to analyze the coordinates from the shipment data. It might lead us back to Dex's base of operations. If we can pinpoint where he's hiding, We can plan our next move. Jax felt a surge of determination. Let's get to work. If we can find out where he's operating from, we can devise a plan to disrupt his operations and get the intel we need to take him down. As they settled in, the atmosphere inside the ship shifted. The buzz of the controls and the rhythmic hum of the engines became a backdrop for their growing tension. Jax could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on them, a reminder of the stakes they were facing. Narya and Rax worked diligently, their fingers flying over the controls as they dissected the data. Jax watched them, a sense of admiration swelling in his chest. They were not just allies, they were family, bound together by a shared purpose. Got it, Rax exclaimed suddenly, breaking Jax from his thoughts. He turned the monitor to show a series of coordinates blinking on the screen. These are likely points where the shipments were intercepted. If we triangulate them, we might be able to find Dex's main operation base. Noria leaned in closer, her eyes wide with excitement. We can set a course and see where it leads us. If we get close enough, we might even be able to gather more intel. Jax felt a surge of hope. All right, let's do it. Plot the course and prepare for takeoff. As Rax input the coordinates, Jax felt the familiar thrill of anticipation mixed with anxiety. They were on the verge of something big, something that could either change their lives or end them. Ready when you are, Rax said, glancing back at Jax. Let's go, Jax replied, steeling himself for the unknown. The engines rolled to life, shaking the ship as it lifted off the ground, ascending into the starry sky. Noria took a deep breath, her eyes locked on the viewport. What if we find Dex? What's our plan then? We improvise, Jax said, his voice steady. We have to be ready for anything. This is our shot to turn the tables on him. The ship pierced through the atmosphere, the dense green of Ullon 7 fading into the vastness of space. As they broke free from the planet's grasp, a sense of freedom washed over Jax, mingling with the weight of their mission. Hours passed as they traveled, the stars shimmering around them like distant diamonds. Jax found himself lost in thought, contemplating the risks they were taking. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but the resolve in his heart remained steadfast. Approaching the coordinates, Rax announced, pulling Jax back to the present. The excitement in his voice was palpable. We should be able to see something soon. Nuria's expression turned serious, her focus unwavering. Everyone ready. Once we arrive, we have to be quick and quiet. Always, Jax replied, determination coursing through him. Let's see what Dex is hiding. The ship descended toward a desolate moon, its surface marked by craters and shadowy ravines. Jax felt a knot tighten in his stomach as they approached the landing zone, a clearing surrounded by jagged rock formations. Setting down, Rax said, fingers deftly maneuvering the controls. The ship touched down with a slight jolt, and the engines whirred to a stop. As silence enveloped them, Jax took a moment to collect his thoughts. All right, we need to scout the area before making any moves. Stay sharp and keep your weapons ready. Noria and Rax nodded, and together they unbuckled their harnesses and made their way to the exit. Jax felt the weight of their mission settle over him once more, a reminder of the stakes at play. The air was cool and crisp as they stepped outside, the barren landscape stretching out before them. Shadows danced in the moonlight, and Jax felt a sense of foreboding creep into his bones. Which way should we go? Noria asked, glancing around. Let's head toward that ridge, Jax suggested, pointing to a rocky outcrop in the distance. We'll get a better view from there. They made their way across the uneven terrain, their footsteps muffled by the fine dust that coated the ground. Jax's senses were on high alert, every sound amplified in the stillness of the night. As they reached the ridge, they crouched low, peering down into the valley below. The sight that greeted them made their hearts drop. A sprawling compound lay nestled within the moon's craters, surrounded by a high fence and guarded by armed sentries. The buildings were functional, but the presence of guards indicated the importance of what lay within. This must be it, Jax murmured, a mixture of dread and determination settling in his chest. Dex's base of operations. Nuria's voice was barely a whisper. What's the plan? We can't just walk in there. We'll need to gather more intel before making our move, Jax replied, his mind racing with possibilities. There's bound to be a way in, maybe a service entrance or a blind spot in the guard rotations. Rax pulled out a small pair of binoculars, scanning the compound. It looks like there's a loading dock on the north side. If we can get to that point without being seen, it might provide an entrance. Jax nodded, focusing on the loading dock. All right, we'll head that way and look for a way to disable the security systems. We need to move quietly and stick to the shadows. As they began their descent, the reality of their situation settled heavily on Jax's shoulders. He felt a mixture of fear and excitement coursing through him, a thrill of danger that made his heart race. They moved carefully, the darkness of the night enveloping them as they crept toward the loading dock. The compound loomed closer, the guards' voices faint but audible in the stillness. Stay low, Jax whispered, urging Nuria and Rax to follow closely. We can do this. As they approached the loading dock, they noticed a small panel on the wall, likely a security system for the entrance. Rax pulled out a device he had scavenged earlier. I might be able to hack this. Give me a moment. Jax and Nuria kept watch, their hearts racing as Rax focused on the panel. The seconds felt like hours, tension hanging thick in the air. Finally, Rax grinned, his eyes sparkling with triumph. I'm in. The door should be unlocked now. Jax nodded, adrenaline surging through him as he pushed the door open. The hinges creaked softly, and they slipped inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. The loading dock was dimly lit, filled with crates and equipment, the air thick with the scent of machinery and metal. Jax's eyes scanned the area for any signs of danger, but for now, it seemed empty. We need to move quickly, Jax urged, motioning for them to advance deeper into the compound. We have to find out where Dex is keeping the weapons. As they moved through the maze of crates, Jax felt a thrill of anticipation building within him. They were inside Dex's stronghold, the heart of his operations. Every step brought them closer to their goal, but it also heightened the stakes. Over here, Nuria whispered, pointing to a door marked with a symbol that indicated it led to a secure area. Jax moved closer, pressing his ear against the cold metal. I can hear voices, he said, his pulse quickening. They're planning something. We need to listen in. Rax nodded, positioning himself near the door's edge. If we can gather intel on Dex's plans, we might be able to disrupt whatever he's preparing. Jax glanced at Nuria, who nodded, her expression resolute. Let's do this. They'd pressed their ears against the door, straining to catch snippets of conversation. The voices inside were low, but the tension was palpable. The shipment is ready for distribution, but we need to ensure the security details are tight. Dex can't afford any slip-ups, one voice said, a tone laced with authority. Agreed. The last thing we need is an insider leak. We need to make an example of anyone who tries to betray us. Another replied, cold and calculating. Jax's stomach tightened. This was worse than he had imagined. Dex was not just smuggling weapons, he was orchestrating something far more sinister. Keep listening, Jax urged, his heart racing as he pressed closer to the door. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the room, followed by the unmistakable sound of blaster fire. Jax's heart dropped as adrenaline surged through him. Go, he shouted, kicking the door open and rushing inside. The room was a hive of activity, guards scrambling in response to the chaos. Jax raised his weapon, his instincts kicking in as he shouted, "We're not here to play." Nuria and Rax followed closely, taking aim at the guards who were now scrambling to respond. The air filled with the crackle of energy weapons as the confrontation erupted. Get down, Rax shouted, firing at the nearest guard. Jax moved swiftly, dodging blaster fire as he maneuvered through the chaos. His mind raced with the realization that they had stepped into the heart of Dex operations, and now they had no choice but to fight their way out. "Cover me," Noria shouted as she dashed toward a crate, ducking behind it as she returned fire. Jax nodded, his heart pounding as he took aim at another guard, the adrenaline driving him forward. This was it, the calm before the storm had shattered, and they were in the eye of the tempest, facing the chaos head-on. As the room erupted into chaos, Jax knew there was no turning back. They had to fight for their lives and for the fate of countless others caught in Dex's web of deception. The battle had begun, and it was only just the start. The reckoning awaits. Chaos reigned in the dimly lit room as blaster fire lit up the shadows like lightning in a storm. Jax ducked behind a crate, his heart pounding in rhythm with the staccato of gunfire. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burnt ozone, and he could hear the panicked shouts of Dex's guards echoing off the metal walls. "Jax, to your left," Noria shouted, her voice cutting through the clamor. Jax pivoted just in time to see a guard rushing toward him, weapon raised. Without thinking, he pulled the trigger, the blaster's report deafening in the confined space. The guard dropped, but the urgency of their situation surged back to the forefront of Jax's mind. They were outnumbered, and every second spent here risked their lives and their mission. "Rax, get to that terminal," Jax yelled, pointing to a console against the far wall, its screens flickering with data. "We need to access the intel on Dex of operations." Rax, still firing, nodded and made a break for it. Jax followed closely, providing cover as Noria fired off another shot that caught a guard off guard, sending him sprawling. "Keep moving. We can't let them regroup," Noria urged, her face set in determination. Jax and Rax reached the console, Rax immediately setting to work, fingers dancing over the keys. Come on," he muttered, urgency flooding his voice. "I need access to the mainframe. If I can get into their systems, we can find out where Dex is hiding and what he's planning." As Rax typed, Jax scanned the room, keeping a vigilant eye on the remaining guards. The stakes had never been higher. They were in the lion's den, and the clock was ticking. Suddenly, a loud explosion rattled the room, causing the lights to flicker violently. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the guards nearest the entrance staggered back, momentarily stunned. "What the hell was that?" Jax yelled, glancing over his shoulder. "More reinforcements. We need to hurry," Rax shouted, sweat beading on his forehead as he continued his frantic typing. Jax pushed his back against the wall, firing at a group of guards trying to storm the door. Each shot felt like it was ripping through the air, a reminder that their lives hung in the balance. Noria peered over the console, eyes wide. "Do you see anything about the shipments, Rax?" Rax's fingers paused momentarily, eyes scanning the lines of code flashing across the screen. "I'm almost there, just a few more." His voice cut off as he dodged a blast aimed at him, the shot ricocheting off the console and sending sparks flying. "Rax," Jax barked, glancing back. "Focus. We need that intel." Rax took a deep breath, shaking off the adrenaline as he resumed typing. "I'm in. I've accessed the mainframe." His eyes widened as he stared at the screen. Dex is coordinating a massive arms deal. He's planning to sell weapons to a rival faction on Taranis Prime. Jax felt a chill run down his spine. Taranis Prime was a hub of organized crime, and if Dex's weapons reached their hands, it could plunge the galaxy into chaos. "We can't let that happen. We have to stop him." "I'm downloading everything now," Rax said, the tension in his voice climbing. "But we don't have much time before they lock us out." The door burst open, and more guards poured into the room, blasters drawn. Jax fired at them instinctively, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline. "Noria, cover Rax. I'll hold them off." "On it," Noria responded, shifting to a position that gave her a clear line of sight on the incoming guards. The firefight intensified as Jax continued to fire at the guards, each shot requiring laser precision. The thrum of combat filled the room, mingling with the frantic clicks of Rax's typing. Jax's focus narrowed to the task at hand, the urgency of their mission driving him forward. "We're nearly there," Rax shouted, glancing up at Jax with determination. "Just a few more seconds." Jax could see Naria's resolve hardening as she pushed back against the guards, her shots landing with accuracy and power. The adrenaline coursing through them all was a double-edged sword, fueling their fight but amplifying the fear of failure. Suddenly, a sharp pain lanced through Jax's shoulder, and he grunted, staggering back. Damn it. He bit back a curse, quickly assessing the wound. It was superficial, but the blood was beginning to seep through his shirt, and he couldn't afford to show weakness. "Noria," he called out, regaining his footing. "I need cover." "Hold on." Noria fired back, determination etched on her face. "Just a little longer." The guards continued their advance, and the room filled with smoke from blaster fire, making visibility a challenge. Jax crouched low, reloading his blaster, heart racing as he felt the pressure mounting. "Done," Rax yelled, the triumph in his voice piercing through the chaos. "I got the data. Let's go." "Let's move," Jax shouted, bolting toward Rax as Naria provided cover fire. As they sprinted toward the exit, Jax glanced back at the remaining guards, their eyes wild with determination. They were relentless, and it was only a matter of time before they regrouped. "Go, get to the ship," Jax shouted, urging Rax and Naria forward. They raced through the loading dock, the sounds of the fight trailing behind them as they burst out into the open air. Jax felt the rush of adrenaline still coursing through him, pushing him to move faster as they made their way back toward the ship. "Keep an eye out. They'll be right behind us," Noria urged, scanning their surroundings. "Almost there," Rax called, pushing ahead of them as they neared the ship. Jax could see the freighter glinting in the moonlight, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. Just as they reached the ship, an explosion erupted from the compound, flames licking the night sky. Jax turned to see the entrance engulfed in smoke and debris, guards scrambling for safety. "Get inside. Now," Jax shouted, pushing Naria and Rax toward the ship. They climbed aboard, and Jax slammed the hatch shut behind them, locking it tight. The sounds of blaster fire and shouts faded as he rushed to the control panel. "Rax, get us out of here." Rax took his place at the controls, fingers flying over the dashboard. "Activating engines now." The ship hummed to life, shaking slightly as the systems engaged. Jax felt the weight of the moment crash over him. They had escaped, but the fight was far from over. "Everyone's strapped in," Rax called, glancing back at them. "Ready," Noria shouted, securing her harness. "Let's get out of here," Jax said, adrenaline surging as he felt the ship lift off the ground. The view of the compound shrank below them, engulfed in smoke and flames, a stark reminder of the chaos they had just escaped. As the ship soared into the sky, Jax took a moment to breathe, allowing the weight of their success to wash over him. They had acquired the intel needed to take down Dex, but the battle wasn't finished. "Rax, plot a course for the nearest safe haven," Jax said, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts racing in his mind. Rax nodded, inputting coordinates as Naria leaned back in her seat, the tension beginning to ebb away. "Did we get everything?" Noria asked, her voice laced with anxiety. Rax turned to them, his face a mix of exhaustion and determination. "We have the data, but we need to analyze it properly. This is just the beginning." Jax nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "We're not done yet. We need to expose Dex and stop his operations for good." The ship cruised into the darkness of space, the stars twinkling like distant hopes. Jax knew they were in for a fight, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of purpose burning within him. As they prepared for what lay ahead, Jax looked at his comrades, the bonds of their friendship solidified by the trials they had faced together. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for justice, for a chance to right the wrongs that had plagued the galaxy. Let's bring Dex down, Jack said, his voice firm. For all the lives he's threatened, for everyone who's suffered because of him. Narya and Rax nodded, their resolve mirroring his own. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but together they would forge their destiny. The final confrontation. The stars outside the ship streaked into brilliant lines as Rax engaged the hyperdrive, the familiar sensation of being stretched between dimensions enveloping them. Jax leaned back in his seat, taking a deep breath as the adrenaline began to wear off. The fight they had just escaped was etched in his mind, but it was far from over. They needed a plan, and they needed to act fast. Rax, how long until we reach the rendezvous point? Jax asked, breaking the silence that had settled in the cabin. About an hour, Rax replied, his fingers tapping rhythmically on the controls. We'll meet with the intel team at the outer rim of Corellia. They'll help us analyze the data and formulate a strategy to take down Dex. Good. We need to figure out how to expose him before he can move the arms shipment, Noria chimed in, her voice steady but laced with urgency. The longer we wait, the more danger we put others in. Jax nodded, pulling up the holographic display that projected the data Rax had retrieved from Dex's compound. It swirled before him, graphs and schematics unfurling like a tapestry woven with threads of corruption and deceit. Let's take a look, Jax said, leaning closer to the display. The information was dense, but the crucial points began to emerge. There are details here about shipments, locations, and even contact lists. If we can leak this to the galactic authorities. Not just the authorities, Rax interrupted. We need to get this to the media too. Dex is too powerful. If the authorities move without public support, they'll just be met with resistance. Noria pursed her lips in thought, her brow furrowing. You're right. We need to build a narrative that turns public opinion against him. People need to know what he's doing. If we expose him as a traitor to the galaxy, it will make it harder for him to operate. Then we need to act quickly, Jax urged, feeling the weight of their mission pressing down on him. Let's divide the tasks. Rax, you focus on getting the data cleaned up for the authorities. Noria, start drafting a press release. I'll reach out to our contacts in the media. As the three of them began their work, the ship hummed steadily through the void. Jax found his thoughts racing. This was the pivotal moment they had been preparing for, the culmination of all their efforts. All right, Jax said, let's put a spotlight on Dex. I want everyone in the galaxy to know what kind of monster he really is. The gathering storm. An hour later, the ship exited hyperspace with a jolt, the familiar sight of Corellia sprawling before them like a glittering jewel against the backdrop of the cosmos. Rax deftly piloted the ship toward the designated meeting point, a remote outpost on the edge of the bustling planet. As they descended through the atmosphere, Jax looked out at the sprawling urban landscape below, the towers and spires of the city reaching for the sky like a forest of metal and glass. There it is, he said, trying to quell the flutter of nerves in his stomach. Let's hope our contacts are ready for us. They landed smoothly at the outpost, a nondescript building nestled among the other structures, its exterior blending seamlessly into the bustling environment. As they disembarked, Jax's senses heightened. Every sound, every movement seemed magnified in the charged atmosphere. Stay alert, Jax whispered to Noria and Rax as they stepped into the outpost. Inside, the dim lighting and muted conversations enveloped them. The air was thick with the scent of oil and spice, and the murmurs of patrons filled the space like an undercurrent. A tall figure emerged from the shadows, a rugged man with a scar running down the side of his face and a knowing smile that hinted at years of survival in a harsh world. You made it, he said, extending a hand. I'm Darnek. You must be the ones looking to take down Dex. That's us, Jax replied, shaking his hand firmly. We've got intel on his arms deal. We need to get this information out as soon as possible. Darnek's expression turned serious as he motioned for them to follow him deeper into the outpost. Let's talk privately. Dex has eyes everywhere, and we don't want him catching wind of our plans. Once they settled into a secluded booth, Jax shared the details of their mission, the data Rax had extracted, the need for public exposure, and the urgency of their actions. Darnak listened intently, nodding along. "I can help you with the media contacts," Darnak said. "I have a few reporters in my pocket who owe me favors. But you need to understand that this will make Dex furious. He'll retaliate. Are you ready for that?" "We're ready for anything," Noria replied, her voice steely. "We're not backing down." Jax felt a surge of resolve from his companions. They had come too far to turn back now. Too many lives were at stake. "We're prepared to face whatever comes our way," he affirmed. Darnak nodded, the gravity of their mission hanging in the air. "Then, let's get to work." The plan takes shape. Over the next few hours, they collaborated with Darnak, poring over the intel and crafting a strategy. Rax worked feverishly on his terminal, organizing the data into an easily digestible format, while Darnak contacted the media outlets. Jax and Noria crafted a compelling narrative, highlighting Dex's arms deals and the imminent threat to the galaxy. As night fell on Corellia, the outpost buzzed with activity, a hive of restless energy that mirrored their own anticipation. Jax could feel a tension building, each passing moment bringing them closer to a confrontation they knew was inevitable. Finally, Darnak returned to their booth, a satisfied grin on his face. "I've got a meeting set with one of the top reporters in the galaxy. They'll want to hear everything. We'll broadcast this story as soon as we're ready." "Excellent," Jax said, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "We need to be clear about the consequences of Dex's actions. We have to ensure the public understands that he is a threat to peace." Rax leaned back in his seat, exhaustion creeping into his voice. "Once this goes live, it'll put us on Dex's radar. We need to be ready for whatever he throws at us." Noria exchanged a glance with Jax, a silent agreement passing between them. "We will be," she said. "We've come this far together. We can't let fear dictate our actions." As they prepared for the meeting, Jax felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just fighting for their own survival. They were standing against the darkness that Dex embodied, a light in the vast expanse of space. The countdown. At last, the moment of truth arrived. They gathered in a small conference room, the dim lighting casting long shadows as they awaited the reporter. Jax's heart raced, anticipation mingling with the fear of what would come next. "Remember, we're telling a story," Jax reminded them. "This isn't just about facts. It's about the people Dex has hurt, the lives he's threatened." Noria nodded, her expression fierce. "We need to humanize this. People need to see the consequences of his actions." Just as they prepared to present their case, the door swung open, and a woman stepped inside, her confidence radiating from her. She was in her mid-30s, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "I'm Cassia," she introduced herself, extending a hand. "Darnak told me about your situation. I'm here to help." "Thanks for coming," Jax said, shaking her hand. "We have urgent information regarding Dex's operations that you need to see." As Jax began to explain the situation, Cassia listened intently, her gaze flicking between him and the data displayed on Rax's terminal. "This is explosive," she said, her voice low. "If we can get this out to the public, it could change everything." "Exactly," Rax added, leaning forward. "We need the right angle to ensure maximum impact." Cassia nodded, her mind clearly working through the possibilities. "Let's do this. We'll need to schedule an interview with you, along with some dramatic visuals. The public needs to see the face of the enemy." "Count us in," Noria said, her voice resolute. "We'll make sure the story is compelling." As they strategized, Jax felt the weight of their mission pressing down on him. They were on the brink of exposing Dex, but the danger was far from over. If he discovered what they were doing, he wouldn't hesitate to retaliate. The storm breaks. Suddenly, the lights in the outpost flickered ominously, plunging them into a brief darkness before the emergency lights kicked in, bathing the room in a sickly red glow. "Darnak." Jax called, instinctively reaching for his blaster. "What's happening?" Darnek's expression turned grave as he moved toward the door. "Stay alert. Dex's men could be on us. They must have tracked our communications." Jax's heart raced as he and the others prepared for a fight. He had known that the moment they began exposing Dex, they would be marked as targets. "Cassia, get the data ready for transmission," Jax instructed, his voice steady despite the tension. "We need to ensure this gets out, even if we don't make it." "On it," Cassia replied, her determination unwavering. As the door burst open, a group of armed guards stormed in, blasters raised. "You're coming with us," one of them shouted, scanning the room for their targets. Jax's instincts kicked in, and he fired back, the blaster bolts illuminating the room with flashes of blue light. "Get down," he yelled, diving behind a table as blaster fire erupted around them. Noria was quick to follow, taking cover beside Jax. "We have to hold them off while Cassia transmits the data," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Rax, get to the door and cover our exit," Jax ordered, adrenaline surging through him. Rax scrambled to comply, firing at the guards while trying to keep them at bay. "I can't hold them off forever." "Just buy us time," Jax shouted back, feeling the urgency of the moment. As Jax peeked over the table, he could see the guards advancing, their faces twisted with determination. "We can't let them take us alive," he yelled. "Fight back." Noria unleashed a flurry of shots, each one finding its mark as Jax joined her, the room erupting with the sounds of battle. The air crackled with tension as they fought against the tide, their focus laser-sharp. "Cassia, how's it going?" Jax called out between shots. "I'm almost there," she shouted back, fingers flying over the terminal as she worked to send out the information. Come on, Rax urged, glancing back at her. Jax's heart pounded as the guards pressed forward, determined to take them down. The situation was precarious, and he could feel the tide turning against them. "Hold the line," Jax yelled, refusing to back down. "We can't give up now." The final stand. As the battle raged, Cassia's voice rang out. "It's done. The data has been transmitted." "Good, now let's get out of here," Jax shouted, signaling for Rax and Noria to regroup. Just as they began to make their escape, a new voice cut through the chaos, a voice that sent a chill down Jax's spine. Well, what do we have here?" Dex stepped into the room, flanked by a group of elite guards, his expression smug and confident. "You thought you could expose me without facing the consequences." Jax's heart sank as he stared down the man who had terrorized countless lives. "We won't let you get away with this." Dex chuckled darkly, his eyes glinting with malice. "You're outnumbered and outgunned. You've made a grave mistake." Noria stepped forward, her voice steady despite the overwhelming fear. "We're not afraid of you, Dex. You think you can silence us? We've already sent your secrets to the galaxy." Dex's eyes narrowed, the tension in the room thickening. "You've made a foolish error, but I admire your bravery. It's almost commendable." Jax glanced at Noria and Rax, a silent understanding passing between them. They had to fight, even if the odds were against them. "Let's show him what we're made of," Jax said, raising his blaster, ready to confront the darkness head-on. As blaster fire erupted once more, the room exploded into chaos. The battle reached a fever pitch, each side pushing back with ferocity. Jax fought with every ounce of strength he had, fueled by the knowledge that their actions could change the course of the galaxy. In the midst of the fray, Dex laughed, the sound chilling. "You think you can stop me? I am power." "Not for long." Noria shot back, determination etched on her face. As they fought, Jax could see cracks forming in Dex's confidence. The tide of battle was turning, and they were refusing to back down. With a final push, Jax aimed his blaster at Dex, heart racing. This ends now, the moment of truth. Before he could pull the trigger, a deafening explosion rocked the outpost, sending everyone sprawling. Jax hit the ground hard, the world spinning around him. Dazed but alive, he looked around, struggling to regain his bearings. The guards were disoriented, confusion rippling through their ranks. Jax quickly scrambled to his feet, glancing for his companions. Noria was crouched behind a table, her expression fierce. Rax was on the other side, surveying the scene. "Where's Dex?" Jax shouted, scanning the smoke-filled room. "I don't see him," Noria replied, her voice tense. "Let's move. We can't let him escape," Jax urged, pushing through the haze, adrenaline surging through him once more. As they regrouped, the chaos of the explosion lingered in the air, but Jax felt a surge of determination. They were close, so close to bringing Dex down for good. "Over there," Rax shouted, pointing to a door at the far end of the room. "He's trying to escape." Without hesitation, Jax charged toward the door, Noria and Rax at his heels. They burst through the door just in time to see Dex disappearing into the shadows of the hallway. "Get him," Jax shouted, pushing himself forward, heart pounding as they raced after him. The chase. The narrow corridor twisted and turned, and Jax could hear Dex's footsteps echoing ahead of them. "Don't let him get away," he yelled, fueled by the thought of justice at hand. They turned a corner, and Dex skidded to a stop at the end of the hall, his back against a wall. He turned, a wicked smile on his lips. "You think you can catch me? You're in over your heads." Jax and Noria slowed, their breath coming in sharp gasps as they faced him down. Rax stood ready, blaster aimed at Dex, but Jax felt a sense of calm wash over him. This was it, the moment they had fought so hard for. "You've hurt too many people, Dex," Jax declared, his voice steady. "You won't escape justice this time." Dex's smile faltered, his bravado fading as he realized he was cornered. "You think this is over? I have allies everywhere. I'll be back." "Not if we have anything to say about it," Noria shot back, stepping forward, her own weapon raised. "Enough games, Dex," Rax yelled, his resolve firm. "You're done." Dex's eyes darted between them, panic creeping in. "You don't know who you're dealing with." But Jax didn't hesitate. With a steady aim, he fired, the blaster bolt hitting Dex square in the chest. The impact sent him reeling, and he collapsed to the ground, the fire of corruption extinguished. As Dex lay there, a life fading from his eyes, Jax felt a mix of relief and sadness. They had won, but at what cost? "Is it over?" Noria asked, her voice soft, a hint of disbelief lacing her tone. "Not yet," Rax said, glancing back toward the hallway. "We need to get out of here before more of his men show up." Jax nodded, determination surging through him. They had fought hard, and it wasn't over until they were safe. "Let's go. We have to make sure the data reaches the public." The aftermath. As they made their way back to the ship, Jax felt a sense of weight lift from his shoulders. They had faced their fears, confronted the darkness, and come out on the other side. They were not just survivors, they were warriors, and they had each other's backs. Once aboard the ship, Rax immediately began preparing for takeoff. "I'll set the course for a safe location," he said, fingers flying over the controls. "Do it," Jax replied, his heart still racing from the adrenaline of the confrontation. Noria sat down, her gaze focused ahead. "We did it, didn't we? We actually took him down." Jax turned to her, a smile breaking through the seriousness of the moment. "We did, and now we need to ensure that his influence doesn't linger. The galaxy deserves to know the truth." As they took off, Jax watched the landscape of Corellia fade behind them, the stars stretching out before them like a vast ocean of possibilities. They had faced incredible odds and emerged victorious. "Cassia will get the information out," Rax said, breaking into Jax's thoughts. "And when she does, the galaxy will know the truth about Dex." "Let's make sure it's heard far and wide," Jax replied, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "We need to bring awareness to the danger he posed." As they flew into the darkness of space, Jax knew this was only the beginning. They had struck a blow against tyranny, but the fight for justice was an ongoing battle. "We'll be ready for whatever comes next," Noria said, her voice filled with resolve. Jax nodded, feeling the weight of their journey in every fiber of his being. Together, they would stand against the darkness, champions of light in a galaxy that desperately needed it. As the stars twinkled outside the viewport, Jax felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. They were not just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for a future where justice could prevail. And as long as they stood together, they could face anything the universe threw at them.